The time by Carrie Chris is 6 p.m. Time for CBX Business News. The business news headlines is brought to you by CBX Wealth Management, making more possible. Millions in currency intervention, warning bells for the Caribbean, and global markets in turmoil. Hello, welcome to CBX Business News for Thursday, June 12, 2025. I'm Yunil Wood. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in the newscast locally, BOJ's intervention in the foreign exchange market for a third straight day reaps success. US dollar now below 160 Jamaican dollars. On the regional front, IMF's Deputy Managing Director warns of Caribbean growth slowdown, calling for urgent economic reform. And over on the international stage, sovereign bond yields slide globally as investors flock to safe haven assets amid trade uncertainty. Stay tuned as we unpack these and more stories right after this break.
Wealth is not simply counted in dollars or cents, but in the time we spend with love, in love, giving love. Wealth is not simply a means to an end. It is the means to live out loud. Wealth is more than money. It's about family, the memories you create, the legacy you leave behind, and your ability to enjoy life in the moment. It's also about seeing the QMAX possibilities and seizing investment opportunities to achieve the future you want and deserve. Which is why QMAX Wealth will focus on your investments so you can experience more. Because true wealth is truly more. To start investing today, call 876-926-7767.
The local news is brought to you by Darriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments. Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with local news in the agribusiness sector. The Jamaica Social Investment Fund, JSIF, has committed approximately $100 million in funding for agribusiness investments under its Rural Economic Development Initiative, Ready Phase 2. The announcement comes ahead of the Jamaica Agribusiness Investment Forum, JAIF, scheduled for September 17 to 19 at the Montego Bay Convention Center in St. James. The forum aims to unlock investment opportunities in agriculture, boost value-added production, and promote food security. Speaking at the recent media launch at Hope Gardens in St. Andrew, General Manager of JSIF Orville Hill says that the partnership is in keeping with the agency's commitment to development of the agricultural sector. Mr. Hill noted that JSIF has invested in greenhouse cluster sites across the island to support sustainable livelihoods and to build a modern, export-ready and value-driven agribusiness landscape. Meanwhile, the JSIF head is also calling on stakeholders across government, the private sector, and civil society to join in championing agricultural transformation. Together, he says we can create a future where agribusiness is not only about profitability, but also bolsters food security and enhances the livelihoods of farmers, entrepreneurs, and the nation. Minister of Labor and Social Security Pernell Charles Jr. has lauded the National Commercial Bank Jamaica (NCBJ) for its new audio guidance feature across select automated banking machines, ABMs. Speaking at the launch event on Monday at the Matilda's Corner NCB branch in Ligonier, St. Andrew, Minister Charles Jr. applauded NCBJ for its visionary leadership.
I'm here to congratulate NCB on the vision, but more importantly, the execution. We are here to continue to acknowledge and to celebrate with the community, our family of persons with disabilities, particularly in this case, those who might be blind or visually impaired, but who, when you get an opportunity to be honored with really being integrated and having conversation, you realize that what you might see as one challenge, usually, if not all times, opens up, just accentuates their character, their drive, their ambition, and many other positive things elsewhere.
He also encouraged other financial institutions to follow NCBJ's lead by implementing this important technology.
And additionally, we want to encourage the other institutions that are looking on. We want to encourage the private sector and the government as well to see NCB as a leader. And when you have a leader, you know what you should do. Follow.
Meanwhile, the Labour Minister describes the move as a well-timed action.
So it is my distinct honor today for the official launch of the National Commercial Bank Jamaica's Limited ABM guidance feature, which is timely. It's important, and it really, for me, is innovation in action. You know when innovation has been properly integrated is when we take it for granted. It's when you take for granted that it is there. And I can't wait until we take this for granted in a positive way, until this becomes the complete norm.
Labour and Social Security Minister Pernell Charles Jr. He added that the audio feature will serve to benefit many blind and visually impaired persons, but insisted that the next generation should see accessibility as the norm. The Bank of Jamaica BOJ today injected another US $30 million into the foreign exchange forex market through a B-Fixit flash auction, marking the third consecutive day of intervention this week. In a statement released earlier today, the central bank says it received 51 eligible bids totaling US $82.1 million. However, only 23 bids were accepted, with a total allocation of US $30 million to authorized dealers and select cambios. Among the financial institutions receiving allocations were National Commercial Bank, US $6 million, Sagicor Bank, US $4.28 million, Victoria Mutual Building Society, US $4 million, and First Global Bank receiving US $2 million. The auction also saw successful bids from several cambios and investment firms, including Mayberry Investments, US $4.8 million, Alliance Financial Services, US $3.3 million, Grace Kennedy Currency Trading Services, receiving US $1.5 million, and Burrito Investments Limited was allocated US $1 million. The latest injection follows two earlier interventions on Tuesday and Wednesday, each also valuing US $30 million. And as the central bank continues its efforts to stabilize the market, let's take a look at how the Jamaican dollar traded today against the major currencies. At the end of currency trading on Thursday, the US dollar is selling for $159.60, the Canadian for $118.12, the pound at $216.62, while the going rate for the euro is $184.05. Now we go to trading news from the Jamaica Stock Exchange. 114 stocks traded on the JSE Thursday, of which 44 advanced, 48 declined, and 22 traded firm. Kingston Wharves, Medical Disposables and Supplies, Margaritaville Turks and Lasco Manufacturing led the winners, while leading the losers were JMMB Group's 7.15% cumulative redeemable preference share, R.A. Williams Distributors, Key Insurance Company, and Kintar Holdings. Now the main index declined by 329.20 points or 0.11% to close at 312,503.70. The junior market index, however, advanced by 21.54 or 0.63% to close at 3,429.04. And it's time for Market Education Feature, brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standard. When you hear the term shadow pricing, what comes to mind? In today's Market Education Feature, we will be looking at what it means and why it matters. In money market funds, shadow pricing is the practice of valuing securities based on their amortized cost rather than their current market value. While these funds aim to keep a stable net asset value, NAV, of $1 per share, the actual NAV can vary slightly. Regulations require funds to disclose this real NAV, known as the shadow price, to provide investors with a clearer picture of the fund's performance. Now, beyond investing, shadow pricing helps businesses better assess a project's true value by factoring in both economic and social impacts. It's a key tool in cost-benefit analysis, supporting smarter decision-making and encouraging ethical responsibility in project planning and evaluation. The Market Education Feature was brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. And that's it for Market Education Feature and the local news segment. Please stay with us. Regional news is up next. The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments.
Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited has been a part of Jamaica's manufacturing landscape for over 20 years. By crafting unique flavors and fragrances, we have become a part of your favorite household and food items such as beverages, ice cream, household cleaners, and much more. Known throughout the Caribbean for the highest quality, we continue to innovate with strong leadership, a dedicated team with integrity. We go the extra mile for our customers. Create the next taste sensation. Contact us at 876-9235-111 or visit our website, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn pages.
Welcome back, and now for the regional business news. The Caribbean's economic growth potential has fallen by half over the past 2 decades, placing the region at increased risk of marginalization and widening its income gap with advanced economies. That warning came from Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, Dr. Nigel Clark, during the 25th William G. Demas Memorial Lecture in Brasilia. Speaking at the Caribbean Development Bank's CDB 55th annual meeting, Clark cited flatlining productivity as the primary drag on long-term growth.
Let us be clear about what is at stake. Slower growth in the Caribbean slows the improvement in living standards, and stymies the aspirations of Caribbean people for better opportunities. Slower growth in the past has also meant that convergence in income levels between the Caribbean and advanced economies has stalled. In other words, the gap between the fortunes of the Caribbean national and that of her counterpart in the advanced world is growing wider.
Clark, who is a former CDB governor, further pointed to renewed protectionist trade measures, particularly in the United States, as an added strain on the Caribbean's open export-oriented economies.
In April, the effective tariff rate, the effective U.S. tariff rate jumped to levels not seen in a century. And while trade talks continue, there's been a scaling back of some tariffs, but trade policy uncertainty remains off the charts.
IMF Deputy Managing Director, Dr. Nigel Clark. The Eastern Caribbean Alliance, EKA, is set to roll out a major agricultural resilience initiative aimed at strengthening the region's capacity to recover swiftly from natural disasters. EKA representative in the Eastern Caribbean states, Greg Rowling, says this initiative will ensure that farmers can bounce back quickly after natural disasters. He was speaking on Wednesday during IICA Dominica Annual Accountability Seminar.
ECA has secured resources to implement a project designed to establish a quality seed program for rapid agricultural disaster response in the Caribbean region, which will ensure that there is easy access to seed and planting material after any devastating impact on the sector, thus allowing for timely restoration of production and livelihoods in the sector. The project will involve the establishment of mobile seed banks, a regional supply network, a strategy to leverage external financial resources, and a training program that supports the sustainability of the system.
Mr. Rowling says Dominica is expected to play a pivotal role in these efforts.
We anticipate that Dominica, which has recently established the Dominica China Agricultural Science Complex building, which includes a facility for storage of seed, will play an active role in this project.
The Eastern Caribbean Alliance representative in the Eastern Caribbean states, Greg Rawlings. In other news, Barbados has officially been delisted as a high-risk jurisdiction for money laundering and terrorist financing by the European Union, EU, a move that is expected to ease financial transactions and enhance investor confidence in the Caribbean economy. The decision, confirmed by the European Commission this week, comes after the country demonstrated substantial progress in tightening its anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing AML-CFT regimes. The high-risk list, part of the EU's anti-money laundering directive, requires EU-based financial entities to apply enhanced due diligence when dealing with countries identified as non-compliant. Removal from the list is expected to reduce friction in cross-border financial transactions and lower compliance-related costs for institutions operating with or in the affected country. The Commission noted that its decision followed a thorough technical assessment aligned with standards set by the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, the global body overseeing efforts to combat financial crimes. The review process included on-site visits, bilateral engagements, and evaluation of legal and institutional reforms implemented by the delisted jurisdiction. And from Barbados, we go to Trinidad and Tobago for trading news on the TTSE. 20 securities traded on the TTSE Thursday, of which 6 advanced, 7 declined, and 7 traded firm. Leading the winners were NCB Financial Group, Scotiabank TNT, National Flour Mills, and National Enterprises, while leading the losers were Point Lisas Industrial Port Development, Guardian Holdings, First Citizens Group Financial Holdings, and Massey Holdings. Other results include the All-TNT Index advancing by 2.44 to close at 1,505.25. The Composite Index advancing by 5.40 to close at 1,026.50. And the Cross-Listed Index also advanced, but by 1.20 to close at 71.98. And still at 91.81 is the SME Index. And we take a short break, but please do stay with us. The international news segment with Rondine Williams is up next.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. And now for the international news. The British economy contracted by 0.3% in April, marking its first monthly contraction in 6 months and the sharpest decline since October 2023. This follows a modest 0.2% growth in March, which was steeper than economists' expectation of a 0.1% drop. The contraction is tied to rising costs and new fiscal policies. Households and businesses faced higher energy bills, increased service charges, and an uptick in national insurance contributions. A rise in stamp duty, land tax, and new U.S. tariff threats also added to the economic uncertainty. The services sector, the backbone of the UK economy, was hit the hardest, down 0.4%. Legal activities plunged over 10%. Advertising and market research slipped 3.4%, and wholesale trade declined 3.2%. In contrast, construction rose 0.9%, offering a rare positive note in an otherwise downbeat report. We go now to news from the United States. The US dollar slumped to its lowest level since 2022, with the dollar index dipping below 0.8. The fall was triggered by mounting trade tensions, heightened geopolitical risks, and softer inflation data. Investor nerves were rattled after President Donald Trump announced he would send formal letters to key trading partners proposing a unilateral tariff. The move aims to renegotiate trade deals before the current 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs has expired. Meanwhile, tensions with Iran flared, with threats to target U.S. military bases if nuclear talks collapse. The dollar recorded sharp losses against the euro, Swiss franc, and Japanese yen as traders move into safer assets amid growing global uncertainty. Staying with news from North America. U.S. inflation edged higher in May, with the annual rate rising 2.4% from 2.3% in April. Though this marked the first increase in 4 months, the figure fell just short of market expectations, suggesting inflation remains relatively contained. Prices climbed in several categories. Food was up 2.9%. Transportation services rose 2.8%. Used cars and trucks gained 1.8%. And new vehicles edged up 0.4%. Shelter costs eased slightly, falling from 4% to 3.9%. Energy prices, however, continue to slide, down 3.5% in May. Gasoline prices dropped 12% and fuel oil fell 8.6%. In contrast, natural gas prices surged 15.3%. On a monthly basis, the consumer price index rose just 0.1%, lower than April's 0.2% and below forecasts. Core inflation, which strips out food and energy, remains steady at 2.8% year over year, the lowest level since 2021, reinforcing views that inflation pressures are indeed easing. And over on the global stage, sovereign bond yields declined across major economies on Thursday as investors sought safer assets amid growing concerns over trade policies, geopolitical tensions, and weakening inflation data. In the US, the 10-year Treasury yield fell to 4.36%, dropping nearly 6 basis points. This followed a batch of soft inflation figures and renewed fears of new unilateral tariffs from President Trump. Across the Atlantic, UK bond yields also slid. The 10-year gilt yield fell to 4.496%, its lowest level in 5 weeks, after April GDP data revealed a sharper than expected contraction, fueling speculations about a possible rate cut by the Bank of England. In Europe, Germany's 10-year bond yield dipped below 2.5%, and France's 10-year haute yield fell to 3.18%, its lowest since June 4. Bond yields also retreated in Japan and Canada, both tracking the broader risk of sentiments. Japan's 10-year yields hit a 4-week low at 1.45%, while Canada's dropped to around 3.33%. Emerging markets followed suit. Russia's 10-year bond yield slipped to 15.04%, continuing a gradual downward trend. The synchronized drop in yields reflects investors' caution in the face of escalating global uncertainty. And that's it for the international segment of the newscast. The news recap is coming up on the other side of the break.
So much book you need for high school?
I'll show you how to make sure you have all the money for my books and even some extra. It's called budgeting, Dad. Making a budget is the most important thing you can do to track your money. It keeps a record of how much you make, how much you spend, where you spend it, and most importantly, how much you can save. Write down all your income, write down all your expenses, see where you can cut down and allot more money to more important things, like saving.
Mikey, is what sweet you saw?
Yeah, dear babes. Where's your catty? Me and you go party tonight.
Party? You secure your future yet? Careless.
Did you know that over time the stock market has provided a reliably high return on investments? Be sure to contact a licensed stockbroker for more information on this exciting investment opportunity.
Taking care of business, Mikey?
Yeah, catty. I'm securing my future. Want to come look over my stock portfolio?
The Jamaica Stock Exchange, providing a fair, efficient, and transparent stock market.
And now to recap our top stories. In the local news, BOJ's intervention in the forex market for a third straight day reaps success. Regionally, IMF's Nigel Clark warns of Caribbean growth slowdown, urges economic reform. And internationally, global bond yields fall as investors flee to safety. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of Rondine Williams and the entire production team, I'm Yanil Wood. Thanks for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.